6 months I've been waiting to make this series, so welcome to the inaugural episode, at last, of 90-Minute Mechs. The intention behind this series is to just maybe share some ideas for how you can speed up the process of painting your battle mechs, but maybe still give the impression that you've put a lot more time into them than you really have, producing something that mimics a premium look without maybe having quite so much invested in it. Of course, before we even get into this, the first thing we need to understand is that any painting times I quote are kind of arbitrary to use as a rule to go by, because my painting speed just might not be the same as yours. However, by focusing on times, we also get to think a little bit about time management and understand how we can foreplan to figure out what we can fit into a shorter time scale and what we might have to reserve for those more sit down and concentrate lengthier painting sessions. So with all that said, I did come up with a set of rules for me to follow, and they are more for me to follow, but if you want to follow along too for the sake of a fun and interesting challenge, then well, I hope that they're exactly that. I hope you feel that these rules are fair and that they provide a fun and interesting challenge. So enough prattling on, let's go over those rules. First and foremost, the piece must be completed in 90 minutes or less, and that must include the basing. Priming and mould lines don't count toward the 90-minute time limit. Most people I know do their prep separately to their painting sessions, myself included, so this felt fair. I will keep a timer in shot when I'm filming, but I won't present in real time, mostly because trying to persuade YouTube viewers to watch a 90-minute tutorial is kind of like trying to persuade a Capellan to tell the truth. The timer will be paused for things like toilet breaks, coffee breaks, when I need to change filming positions, that kind of thing. It's supposed to be casual, not stressful, so I don't want to be racing against the clock when I'm filming. Schemes are all going to be taken from the descriptions on camospecs.com, but never based on the visual examples. We're trying to achieve original takes here, not just redo someone else's paint scheme. Whilst all the main techniques will be geared toward efficiency, the plan will also be to free up enough time at the end to be able to add one feature, one show-off part to the scheme, creating something that looks like more than just a speed paint. We will, at some points in the series, probably need to use an airbrush. If you don't have one, and the video does ever come up where we've used one, remember that you can also use dry brushing or wet blending to get nice fast gradients, and whilst they'll look different, they will still look good. We'll also make pretty extensive use of a hairdryer to speed up drying times. So if you don't have one, they cost from about £5 in the UK, $7 or $8 in the US, and they massively speed up your painting. It's not really going to feature into the times because, as I said, we'll be pausing between when we set different things up, but when you're doing it in real time, it's going to make it a lot easier for you to achieve the kind of times that I achieve. And the most important rule, of course, with anything like this, have fun. If following these tutorials at the speed they're presented isn't for you, slow them down. Alternatively, feel free to refine them, use them as a platform to make something better. The point here is to just explore together and have a good time. These schemes and techniques are also going to be transferable to other miniatures, so don't click off if you're not a Battletech player. So in the interest of making our first episode as fair as possible, I want to go for both a scheme and a mech that I've never painted before. That way I've got no tried and tested experience, and I can't just say that I'm making this work in 90 minutes because it's something I've done a million times before and I'm super used to it. So skipping ahead in time, here's our finished mech, a Nightstar painted in the colours of the Fedcom First Corps. So all that remains now is to get painting. So before we jump into the tutorial itself, just one last thing. I want to ask you to remember to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoy it, to consider subscribing to the channel, and to turn on those notifications. Also, do bear in mind, if you really love the content we're doing here and you want to help me to be able to keep creating it, then there are links in the description below to both affiliate links and my Patreon campaign, where you can pledge from just £1 a month to join our amazing Discord community and get a bunch of cool benefits as well. Right. We should probably get on with a tutorial now. This has been running a while. Step 1 is very simple and very quick, as we open up with just a straight up all over dry brush. We're using Vallejo model colour dark Prussian blue, and as this is a first dry brush, we can kind of be as messy as we like here. But the main thing I'd be looking to try to achieve is maybe a little bit more of a full coverage blue toward the top of the model, We'll try to create an effect of an overall gradient as we paint this, leading the eye up the model by ensuring that most of the lighter parts are toward the top. Starting this from the very first layer is just helpful, but it's not essential if you don't quite get it. You might also notice I dry brush from my wet palette here, not my dry palette. That tiny bit of moisture that the dry palette adds actually really helps to make sure the dry brush doesn't turn too dusty. When we get to later, lighter layers, we may well want a drier, grittier look, so there's every chance that we'll switch to the dry palette. And you can see we actually came in 20 seconds under budget here, so we're off to a good start, and we now have a very dark blue Nightstar. Step 2 is going to look quite similar to step 1, but this time I'm introducing a little Vallejo Game Color Magic Blue into the mix. I'm not going to talk exact ratios here because I believe that learning to paint by eye is far more helpful and reliable than copying exact recipes. However, the mix should definitely still heavily favour the Prussian blue. Now the dry brushing's really starting to pay off, as after step 2 we now find ourselves a whole 90 seconds ahead of budget, and with a mech that's starting to get some definition to it. This last step of dry brushing is almost like an airbrush zenithal, where we're really trying to focus on a top-down angle. It's also our brightest dry brush, so just adding some more magic blue into the previous mix gets us to about the colour we want. Try not to go too crazy here though. Remember the spec for this one is navy blue, and whilst navy definitely brightens up when it's in direct light, there's still going to be a limit to how bright we can go before it stops looking like navy. So we're now at 10 minutes 20 seconds, and by budget we should be at 13 minutes. We basically have a finished base coat for the main colour that looks really good. And this is a strong start, so I'm feeling pretty confident at this point. Okay, this is the first step where I'm maybe a little bit nervous about the time budget, but I do think we'll be fine. It's just that I want to be precise here. I don't want to have to keep redoing it. I'm going to use Vallejo Game Color Matte Black just to repaint weapons and any other bits that I want to present as black or near black. This is just basic brushwork, but I'm doing it off the dry palette just because I need that for the next step anyway, and I'd already moved my wet palette off of my desk. It really just makes no difference which one you use. Okay, wow. I have terrible understanding of the passage of time. We should be at 23 minutes now, and we're at 16:21. We're way ahead of schedule. You may have also noticed I accidentally failed to start the timer there. I want to just quickly add in, I did simulate that time loss by kind of fake repainting all of the areas I did before the timer. So it is accounted for, there's no cheating here before anyone calls me out in the comments. Weirdly, when starting the gold accents, we actually won't be starting off with gold at all. Vallejo Game Color Tinny Tin is actually our starting point, and I'll just be randomly picking some areas for accents and getting them based in. I want a kind of interesting looking gold here, not just a typical bright, flat gold, so we're going to use a couple of different colours for a workup. Again, it's just simple brushwork off of the dry palette, but again, which palette you use doesn't really matter. Yeah, I said it, you can use metallics on a wet palette. Okay, so this is the first time I've gone over budget on time. However, we are still massively under our overall budget. It was just the section budget. We should now be at 28 minutes and we're at 22:34. So we are still cruising, we don't need to worry. And that gold has really done some good stuff. Right, this next step is actually kind of 3 steps in one. That's why I've given it 15 minutes. From that tinny tin colour, we're going to do a 3-stage highlight on all of the gold now. We're using Vallejo Game Color Hammered Copper, Brassy Brass and Glorious Gold. And the goal here is to continue that theme of top-down lighting, so making the parts of panels facing the sky the brightest parts, and the deeper colours left toward the shadows. I won't show all of this while I'm working on it because it's exactly the same process 3 times with 3 different colours, but we'll check back in at the end for the reveal and time check, and you'll see how it looks then. Right, we're 33 minutes on the nose, so we're still under time budget, and that's one of the hardest parts done, so that's a really good thing. Again, I admit, there was probably another over budget on time here, and that's because that's a new gold recipe for me that I haven't really got much practice with, so I wasn't sure how long it would take. We now have about an hour left though, so we can really start to get into some nitty gritty. $10 minutes should actually be a fair budget here for a quick 2-stage highlight of Viejo model colour dark grey followed by intermediate blue. Just onto the black areas. Similar process to the gold highlight really, making sure that surfaces which face upwards receive more light. The one key difference here though is we probably give a little bit more emphasis to the edges. This isn't Warhammer, we're not really looking to highlight every single edge to death, but with black surfaces it is a good idea to just give a little tickle to some of them just to accent the shapes, because black just gets a bit lost in itself. Okay, nice and simple again, a little under time budget, we're at 39.40, and we're now going to move on to something really awesome. Okay, this is the part where we'll really start to see the mech come to life. We're going to go back to our previous 2 blues we used, and we're going to use them to scratch little dings in the paintwork. We can also use them to tidy up little mistakes whilst we're doing this, and anywhere that we maybe painted over the lines with the gold. Speaking of the gold, it doesn't hurt if you want to chip into that with your scratches either. This actually adds tons of character and makes it look like the gold is painted on top of the blue paint. The black will want a similar treatment as well on the brightest parts, but for this I'm just going to mix a spot of white into our intermediate blue because it's such a tiny amount, there's no point in getting another colour out of a bottle for it. Okay, that was probably the first process where I really felt like I might run out of time in an area that I couldn't afford to rush. And that's evidenced because I did make a couple of small mistakes. Despite having 6 minutes left in the budget, that part is definitely worth slowing down for. But if I have time at the end, I'll do some corrections, so it'll be fine anyway. I've given this one a generous time budget now because it's several processes in one step. First, we're going to find any parts that we want to present in metallic silver, and we're going to hit them with Viejo metal colour duraluminum. This is the 30mm airbrush bottles here, even though we're brushing it on. And it is important, these metallics are very different to the other Viejo metallics, and they're really special. We're going to have a quick hairdryer moment after that, and then we'll follow it with a wash of Nuln oil from Citadel, and then another quick hairdryer moment. And that's some really quick and simple metallic. Now personally, I don't put a ton of metallic on my mechs, at least not the silver. So I've never really felt a pressing need to highlight it. I'm actually happy to just stop here and call that done for the silver. Okay, 57.47. We've got just over half an hour left, and our mech is basically almost kind of finished. Whatever's left at the very end of the budget is going to be used for basing, and that's going to be a bit of an X factor, but as it currently stands, we have a bee's dick over 32 minutes, and we're heading into the final step of main painting. And this is actually the scary step. The chipping and battle damage has elevated our mech really nicely and made it look great, but I chose first Fedcom specifically because I wanted to see if I could fit a checkerboard pattern into the budget. In the description on camo specs it says that they sometimes have checkerboards on the top panels. So look, you know the drill here, we're painting a checkerboard, so paint a grid, fill in alternate squares, tidy it up at the end, highlight it, tidy it up again. It's really hard to capture on camera with my current setup, so please do forgive me for not giving the most detailed view into doing it. In fact, I actually messed up here and started the timer and then painted a few minutes and then realised I hadn't actually started the camera. That's how focused I was on how tricky this part was to do on camera. That said, if you shout at me in the comments, I can make a separate tutorial for checkers, so if that's something you want and you're not comfortable with doing them and you want to see how I do them, Just let me know and we'll consider trying to fit that in as a separate little mini tutorial. The important question though is how much of our final time budget did we eat? And do the checkers look good? Well, to answer the second question, I think they do. Black is not the best colour over gold, to be honest, and especially not with navy blue. These checkers actually would have looked a ton better if they were white over navy blue. But that's by the by, we're going by the scheme as the scheme is supposed to be, and that's what I was told it should be, so... We designed this scheme to leave enough time for checkers in though, so I do think they're worth the effort however you decide to do them. The time budget overall though, well, we actually still have 15 minutes to spare. So I kept the timer rolling, but I decided not to film this last bit because this part is kind of just going to be down to personal taste. I decided to spend the last part of the budget with some basing, a little tidying up here and there, and just a few more scratches in an even brighter blue. So with all that done, it's time for the final reveal. My final time was 85 minutes once I'd done the basing and those tidying up and extra bits that I did off camera. And I'm actually really happy with that considering the result. Maybe if there was one thing I feel like I should have done with this scheme is push the contrast a little bit further on the blue with just an even brighter highlight pop with those scratches. But hey, when you do this, there was 5 minutes left in the budget, you might well decide you want to do just that. And of course there are plenty of other ways we could elevate this as well if we weren't trying to be time sensitive. One of the things I really would like to do, and I did mention it a little bit in the previous section, is I think there needs to be some more white in this scheme. And it's maybe not in the camo specs description, but I feel like we could probably get away with it. It just would create a bit of a better pop, and black for that checkerboard was just not quite the right colour decision, in my opinion. All of that said, a lance of these is not going to look slapdash. It's going to look good, and you're going to be happy with it. Because we took that simple dry brush approach and elevated it a bit with those little bits of freehand and scratches and texture and stuff. So I think we're in a pretty good place. Other considerations, if you wanted to go a touch further, you could maybe get some rust wash and do some like dripping, streaking rust and grime. But I really think the important one would be those white accents. I think white would really, really help this scheme. And so we come at last to the end of the inaugural episode of 90 Minute Mechs. This video is probably going to be getting on towards the 15 or 20 minute mark, so I hope it's not too long, but as it is the first episode, do leave your feedback below, and also remember to comment with suggestions for either mechs that you'd like to see painted, or for colour schemes that you'd like to see painted. Do bear in mind that supply into the UK is still a little bit sketchy at the moment, so it could be that you suggest something and I want to do it, but I can't physically acquire the miniature to do it. That said, I'll always do my best to keep up with you, so do let me know what you want. Thanks for watching, folks. Happy hobbying. I will see you in the next one. And bye-bye for now.